to Bridging the Gap, a podcast exploring the connection between chronic illness, mental health, and the human experience. I'm your host, Carina Schroedel. So thank you for joining me for another episode. Whether you're living with chronic illness, caring for someone who is, working in healthcare, or simply seeking to understand these experiences more deeply, I'm really grateful you are here. So in our first episode, we discussed just the relationship between chronic illness and mental health, a basic introduction. We explored how physical and emotional health are deeply interconnected and why separating them often leaves individuals feeling unseen and unheard, underserved. In our second episode, we talked about grief, the grief of diagnosis, the grief of identity changes, and the losses that accompany living with a chronic condition. Today, I want to focus on something equally important, but much harder to see. I want to talk about hope. Not the kind of hope that ignores reality. Not the kind of hope that tells people everything happens for a reason. And certainly not the hope that dismisses suffering. I want to talk about evidence-based hope. The kind of hope that can exist alongside pain. The kind of hope that survives uncertainty. The kind of hope that researchers have studied and found to be one of the most powerful protective factors in both physical and mental health. If you've ever wondered why it's possible to build a meaningful life after chronic illness changes, this episode is for you. When people hear the word resilience, they often picture someone who never cries, never struggles, and somehow remains positive no matter what life throws at them. But that's not what resilience actually means. In fact, resilience has been widely misunderstood. Resilience is not the absence of suffering. It's not pretending everything is okay when it isn't. It's not forcing yourself to stay positive every moment of every day. Research defines resilience as the ability to adapt in the face of adversity. Notice that word there, adapt. Resilience is not about avoiding hardship. It's about learning how to move through that hardship. So think about that for a moment. Many people living with chronic illness wake up every day, navigate pain, fatigue, uncertainty, medication side effects, financial stress, changes in relationships, and just fears about the future. Yet, here they are, showing up. They continue caring for their families. They continue attending appointments. They continue finding ways to participate in life. That is resilience. Not because it looks perfect, but because they keep going. One of the most important things I want listeners to understand is that resilience is not something that only a select few people possess. Research suggests that resilience is a process. It is something that can be strengthened and developed over time. In other words, resilience is not something you either have or you do not have. It's something you practice. So what does research say about hope? One of the most fascinating discoveries in psychology is that hope is not simply an emotion. Many people think that hope is a feeling that just comes and goes depending on circumstances. However, researchers have found that hope is actually more than that. Psychiatrist Charles Snyder developed what is known as the hope theory. According to Snyder, hope consists of three essential components. First, we need goals. Second, we need pathways or strategies to each of these goals. And third, we need the motivation to continue pursuing them. So what makes this so powerful is that hope does not require certainty. Hope does not require guarantees. Hope does not require knowing exactly how things will turn out. Hope simply requires believing that there's a future worth moving towards. So for individuals living with chronic illness, that distinction matters because many people spend years waiting for certainty, waiting for the answers, waiting for that symptom improvement, waiting for your perfect treatment, waiting just for life to finally begin again. But hope allows us to live in the meantime. Research consistently just demonstrates that hope associated with is associated with better mental health outcomes, lower levels of depression, and increased treatment engagement, and just an overall greater quality of life. So hope does not eliminate challenges. It's just going to help us navigate them. Let's think about when life doesn't go according to plan. One of the most difficult realities of living with a chronic illness is that it often forces us to rewrite the story that we once imagined for ourselves. Perhaps someone expected to build a certain career, maybe planned to travel extensively, maybe imagined a future without medical appointments, surgeries, medications, or physical limitations. But suddenly life changes. That future we imagined no longer seems possible. And that realization can be just devastating. What often follows is this painful question of, now what? And I believe this is one of the most important questions people face after any major life disruption. Not because it's easy to answer, but because it creates an opportunity for something new. Many individuals discover that while their circumstances have changed, their capacity for meaning has not. Their purpose has not disappeared. Their ability to impact others has not ended. Their story is not over. It's simply taking a different path than expected. One of the most helpful areas of psychological research is the study of post-traumatic growth. Post-traumatic growth refers to positive psychological changes that can occur following adversity. Okay, now let me be clear. This concept has often been misunderstood. Post-traumatic growth does not mean trauma is good. It does not mean illness is a gift. And it does not mean suffering should be separated. What it does mean, though, is that human beings possess remarkable capacity to create meaning from difficult experiences. Researchers have identified several common areas where growth may occur. People often report a greater appreciation for life. They may develop stronger relationships. Many discover personal strengths they never knew they possessed. Others experience spiritual growth or renewed sense of purpose. Some find themselves becoming advocates, educators, mentors, or sources of support for others walking similar paths. In many ways, growth emerges not because of suffering, but because of how people respond to the suffering. So when I think of individuals living with chronic illness, I often see examples of post-traumatic growth everywhere. I see people learning to prioritize what truly matters. I see individuals developing a deeper compassion for themselves and others. I see people becoming stronger, not because they wanted hardship, but because hardship demanded strength they never knew they had. One of the questions I often hear working as a clinical therapist is, how do we actually build resilience? The answer is both simple and challenging. Resilience is built through small actions, repeated consistently over time. Research consistently points to the importance of connection. Human beings are wired for relationships, so supportive friendships, family relationships, support groups, Faith communities or therapeutic relationships also contribute to resilience. Connection reminds us that we just don't have to carry everything alone. And resilience is also strengthened by self-compassion. Many individuals living with chronic illness speak to themselves in ways they would never speak to someone they love. They criticize themselves for needing rest. They judge themselves for limitations. They compare themselves to previous versions of themselves. But self-compassion invites a different approach. It asks us to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer to a friend facing those similar circumstances. And research shows that self-compassion is associated with lower anxiety, lower depression, and improved emotional well-being. Another important factor is purpose. Purpose does not have to be grand or extraordinary. Purpose can be as simple as showing up for your children, helping another person, creating art, sharing your story, advocating for change, learning something new. Purpose gives people a reason to keep moving forward, even when circumstances remain difficult. For clinicians, social workers, nurses, physicians, therapists, and healthcare providers listening today, I would like to offer a challenge. What if healing is bigger than symptom reduction? What if healing also includes increased resilience, improved quality of life, enhanced meaning, stronger relationships, greater hope? Too often, healthcare systems focus on exclusively what is wrong. While symptom management is important, people are more than their diagnosis. People are not a collection of symptoms. They are human beings with dreams, values, strengths, and stories. The more we recognize that reality, the more holistic and compassionate our care becomes. So as we end today's episode, I want to leave you with this. If you are living with a chronic illness and feel discouraged, exhausted, or overwhelmed, I want you to know that your experience matters. Your struggles are real. Your grief is valid. Your challenges deserve recognition, but so does your strength. Even if you don't feel strong today, even if you are simply surviving, even if all you managed to do was make it through another difficult day, that counts. Resilience is not measured by how impressive your recovery looks to everyone. Sometimes resilience looks like attending another appointment. Sometimes it looks like asking for help. Sometimes it looks like resting when your body needs rest. And sometimes it looks like refusing to get up on yourself. Research tells us that human beings are remarkably adaptable, but perhaps what inspires me most is this. People are capable of creating meaning even in the midst of uncertainty. People are capable of finding connection even in isolation. People are capable of discovering hope even when life does not unfold according to plan. Your diagnosis may be part of your story, but it's not the entire story. There's still chapters left to write. There's still people to meet. There's still moments of joy to experience. These are still opportunities for growth, connection, healing, and purpose. Thank you for joining me for episode 3 of Bridging the Gap. If today's conversation resonated with you, please share this episode with someone who may need a reminder that hope is not lost. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember that healing is not always about returning to who we once were. Sometimes healing is about discovering who we are becoming. I'm Carina Schroedel, and you've been listening to Bridging the Gap.